Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 410, recorded the week of December 16th. I'm your host Patrick. We have some very special guests and we'll get to in very shortly. This week's screenshot, Nervision prepares to fight the Lord of Blades in the 251st screenshot of the week. Always like seeing Lord of Blades. We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can watch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums, or from our website at DDOcast.com. DDOcast is hosted by Cyberbears, the awesome podcast hosting network. Shows are usually available within a few days of recording, and the next show will come out sometime during the Christmas weekend, depending on when I can get it recorded and posted. It will not be live. You can stay updated by following us on social media pages or our website, DDOcast.com, with our calendar. With me this week, we have another special Ask the Devs. We're going to be asking them about Update 29, which will hopefully be coming live very shortly, if it has not already done so by the time I release this. So I think, Cordovan, maybe we'll just go around the room and introduce everybody.
Yeah, I'm Cordovan. I am the DDO Community Manager.
I am No Worries Content and Systems Designer.
I'm Severlin, the Executive Producer.
I'm Nobob. I'm a Content and Systems Designer.
I'm Vark Wheel, Systems Designer, and going to probably end up talking a lot about Green Still soon.
Awesome. So Update 29 has some pretty awesome things coming out. We got, 2 quests, 3 legendary raids. But we're going to kind of focus on some of the bigger projects that aren't so much quest content related. And I want to start with random loot. And just maybe start with, what are the goals for this new random loot system?
The main goals were to actually make randomized loot useful again. For the most part, players just kind of ignore what comes out of random loot as it is now, as named loot is just better in pretty much every way. So we wanted to increase the stats, actually make it a bit more competitive, and have players looking in chests again.
So what
part of the random loot system too is that, unlike previously, there's a chance that random loot will actually be even better for its min level, and then even better than that. So you'll always want to check what the chest is. Opening a chest used to be special and cool, and then it got lost somewhere. So we want the players to always check out what's in the chest to see if they want to either use it themselves or maybe pass it to an alt.
So what led to the large shift in loot design? Because we're going from minimum level being determined based on what is on the item to the minimum level being based on the quest, and then the item attributes kind of being based on that. What kind of led to that design shift?
The old system led itself to not being able to get several good effects on an item. It also, behind the scenes, was a bit more complicated than it really needed to be. Having minimum level based off the quest and knowing what the minimum level going in on the item allows us to actually set the effects to be more useful effects, instead of having random effects get tied together, sharing powers, and then a minimum level coming off that, which generally just makes an item that's not good.
Part of it is when you open a chest, you kind of want to use the item. So before, when you got other than the items I call the light blue items because they have the light blue, that's how I identify them when I'm looking at loot. When you get a loot boost from a dragon mark or something, it made an item that you couldn't use yet. And we wanted to supplement that system with items that could also just be better for their minimum level, so you could use them right away.
So does that mean that loot boosts will not increase the minimum level if you're running a quest, or will that the loot boosts boost the minimum level of the item?
The current loot boosts work exactly the same as they do today, so it'll be as if you got a chest of a higher boost. And then in addition, you can get bonuses to an item that doesn't boost the minimum level if you get lucky when you're looking at a chest.
Okay, so if I understand you right, if you're running a level 10 quest and you're using a +2 loot boost, then it will pull items that would normally be found in a level 12 quest?
Yes,
Yes.
that's correct.
Okay, great. So one of the other shifts that is going on here is we're going kind of back to the time where item abilities are going to be limited or determined based on the type of the item. Why did you guys decide to go back to that?
For accessory slots, we went back to a more restrictive system with specific effects found on specific slots. Because I actually think it increases the interestingness of loot. It also means that there are actually less effects that can drop in a given slot, which for players actually increases your chance of getting the effect you want in any given slot. And it also helps us make named items even more interesting because they don't follow these rules. They can have any effects that they want on them. So I think all around it just creates a more interesting system for players to interact with.
Are we going to see more things added to the list of item abilities over time, or is it something you're thinking is going to be more set in stone and not really tweaked very much?
I can pretty much guarantee that after this update goes out, more things will be added and more things will be tweaked. We know this is a big system. We know players, when they interact with it, are going to find different quirks with it, different effects that aren't dropping that they want, other effects that haven't dropped in the past but might be good to drop. So we'll be looking at all that feedback once this goes live, and there'll be plenty of different adjustments and tweaks just to keep making it better.
And I know there's some back end work that was done on this to make item creation a little bit easier. Do you want to kind of maybe explain a little bit about that and how that works behind the scenes and why you kind of wanted to simplify that stuff?
The big change that players won't really notice directly is scaling effects, which for us means we now have a strength effect, and based off of basically, as far as players will see minimum level, but there's basically an item has power, and that determines the scaling of the effect, which means when we make an item, we can just put strength on it. We don't have to go find the right level strength effect, or if that doesn't exist, go make new effects, which that had become the most time-consuming process in all new named loot. Was we were generally making a lot of new effects, and those take a lot of time to make. So by doing the scaling system, that should drastically cut down, which means we can make items faster, more accurate to the powers they should be at a given level, and just make them better, really.
And maybe make more of them.
And that is always a possibility and goal, yes. Maybe more items.
Yeah, in general, I mean, the old system tended to be a lot of one change isn't actually one change, it's more like a dozen changes, and this brings it closer to a change being a change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some other interesting things that you can do theoretically, which we're not taking advantage of yet, but we could. For instance, it's much easier for us to craft the number that drives the effect, since we don't have to change the effect. So you could actually craft an item and increase its strength. There's also, since how these things scale is based on a formula, it's possible for us to change a formula and have a whole bunch of items update.
Retroactively, you mean?
Correct, which before we would have had to go in and change like hundreds or even thousands of items. If something doesn't scale right, once we change that formula, the items will just work because the effects don't change.
Seems like that could have been handy a few times over the years.
Yeah, maybe.
What about all the gems and the consumables, tomes, and all that fun stuff? Are they still going to be dropped? Are the drop rates going to be changed or anything like that?
Those all still drop the same drop rates they had before. If this was only for wearable items that get effects.
Okay. And the players have raised a few concerns that this random loot system could turn out to be really great and powerful, but it might overshadow some of the existing named and raid loot and kind of make them less desirable. Can you speak to those concerns at all?
There is most likely some named items that won't be as good as before. There'll be other named items that are still great and still more powerful than what you can get. And that's kind of a byproduct of how inconsistent stuff was. And that's what this was designed to do, was bring a consistent curve to our powers throughout the levels, which means everything that was way off from things in the past is now what it is. It's either not powerful enough or it's still a bit overpowered, and so yeah, there's going to be some changing of loots and some things will kind of get obsoleted.
The nice thing about it though is that when someone points out an item now, it'll be fairly easy for us to look at it and say yeah, so that we can, as player feedback comes on specific items, we can tell more immediately where it exists in the current sort of power hierarchy. Is it too low? That's much more consistent.
Okay.
I will say as well, some of our named items, offer certain combinations still that you're not going to see drop in random loot. There may be certain aspects of our heroic named items that still are the best in slot for that level. There's also going to be items that, while there may be a technical way to achieve a slightly higher stat or benefit, using this new system, there's still going to be some reasons why you would want to find, wear, and equip that older loot.
And just for all the cosmetic folks out there, are there going to be any new random cosmetic looks yet?
There are no new looks in this new random loot, no.
Okay. Figured someone out there somewhere wants to know those things.
I want to know. I mean, like, if I didn't know, I would want to know that, because I would love to add new looks into random loot, but it's hard when you're, the loot that comes out, we want new looks on that too, so it's just a bandwidth issue. Excuse me.
Indeed. So is there anything else you want to mention for players about random loot before we move on to the next topic?
No, the only thing I'd say, though, about the cosmetic thing is we do have new cosmetic looks coming in Update 29. They're on the new named items, both armors and weapons. So those who are looking for a new look will have some new choices ahead of them with Update 29.
I would just say that make sure to give us plenty of feedback, because it is a fluid system at this point, and we can make adjustments a lot easier, and I'm sure it will not be 100% perfect on its way out the door, and we're willing to take feedback and make changes.
The only constant in an MMO is change.
That's true.
So I want to focus a little bit on Legendary Greensteel, and maybe just start, what was it like expanding such a well-loved and received system from Heroic into Legendary?
It was definitely a little scary. It's, going into it, I knew there were very high expectations. We all knew it. We still have access to some devs who worked on it at the time and talked to some of them. It's the game has changed around Greensteel in a lot of ways. If you go back and look at the Age of Heroic, there's a lot of things we didn't do on purpose. We didn't make everything hidden. We don't expect that players are going to have to burn ingredients for months on end to try and just figure out what recipes are even possible. So there's a lot that is loved and we tried to preserve, and there's some that we looked at that this is not for the DDO of today. And wrapping our head around all of those moving parts and changes over time, it was a pretty big, daunting task, I think I'd call it.
So you kind of mentioned that you didn't want to necessarily preserve as much of the mystery and have people burning a lot of stuff, but there are other things that were important that you wanted to keep. What were some of the things that, when you were looking at this, that you wanted to have translate into Legendary, and what were some of the things that you didn't really want to keep and wanted to improve?
So I think some of the biggest appeal of Heroic Greensteel, and hopefully Legendary Greensteel, is just the ability to get the item you want and put what you want on it. So it supports nearly every weapon type. It supports 8 different equipment slots, belts, helmets, necklaces, that kind of thing. So it's juggling, for any MMO player, juggling your loot is a task of, I want this effect and maybe I need it in my necklace and this named item has this other thing here. And one of the great things about Greensteel, because it's such a large crafting system, is you can find the thing that you want and get it where you need it. It'll solve a lot of your problems. If there's a hole in your loot and you need this or that, you can probably put it in there somewhere. It's not going to solve every problem, and we don't want it to solve every problem, because we want to be able to make more loot in the future. But that's one of the big appeals. Regarding the mystery, we're trying not to take all of the mystery out. We know that did have some appeal, but we're not. I don't think players are looking for, well, I'm going to have to run this raid 100 times and I'm going to waste half the ingredients before I get anything out of it. So we pulled back on that a lot. We are still trying to keep some of the mystery in some of the combo effects that you can make with your higher tier stuff once you've filled everything in. Some of the other things that we've tried to avoid is the penalties that players have paid for mistakes in the past. I think anyone who's done enough Greensteel crafting is probably aware of trying to make a dual shard and maybe having made a mistake somewhere along the way and ending up with this item that's just, well, it's not what I wanted, and there's no way to fix it at all, and that was true for years. We eventually introduced yellow doping, but even then, that doesn't really let you do an undo and go back one step. So that was one of the driving forces for us moving towards a new augment type slotting system, where you still have 3 tiers, but you can sort of pick and choose, and you can do them in any order. And yeah, it turns out a player might still screw up and make a tier 2 augment that they didn't mean to. But if you do that, you don't have to throw the whole weapon away and start over. And like a lot of that's something we really wanted to eliminate.
It also lets you sort of use the item potentially for longer. You know, as the things you want on your weapon change, you can adapt green steel, say through various lives or things like that. That's going to, you know, or keep that sword or whatever, you know, something that you may use on several different lives, because you can always reslot in different augments and things like that, and if you want to, or you can make another weapon. You know, it depends on what you want, what your wants and needs are.
So I guess you already answered why the augment-based system. Do you want to maybe talk about how you kind of got to that point, or do you feel like you kind of already answered that?
So we can talk more about the augment system. The augment system for green steel, I mean, there's a few different ways we got there. Certainly, players, by and large, really like the existing augment system from other items. The red, purple, colorless. Everyone's aware of those, and by and large, it's very popular. On the technical back end, there are some issues with the exact way that that's implemented that make it hard for us to make new augments. So when we looked at green steel and we decided that was the kind of system we really liked, we wanted to put in more technical support to make that easier to make hundreds of new augments and have it comprehensible both to us, the developers, and to players. So in some way, and to give credit where it's due, many, many, many players, when the first inkling of epic green steel back, even years ago was discussed, people have introduced augments as an idea of being like, this would be a really awesome way to do it. And basically we agreed. So this idea has come from many sources, because thinking about heroic green steel, thinking about the augment system, players like it. There were a lot of good reasons to do that, and a lot of good reasons to try to improve it compared to the existing augment system that's been around for several years. I forget exactly what update we introduced it in, but
A while, yeah.
it's been out for a while for sure.
The other thing is there was a lot of kind of systems related work that went into Legendary Green Steel, and one of the things is we added a new UI element onto your inventory character sheet. And, we might be able to potentially in the future find other uses for that augment section of the user interface, and this helps lay some of the groundwork for that as well.
It sounds like you're teasing a little bit that there might be some more things to look forward to with augments, since it sounds like you did a little bit of groundwork for how augments work.
Absolutely, both forward and backwards. Like, one of the things that we could do is make a augment, the colored augment system, use this. The big technical hurdle of that, though, is that not making new augments in new items, but converting the old system is a giant technical hurdle. And we still would have to be careful on how we did that so that players would convert smoothly from an old to a new system. Another technical reason is that, and for anyone who's done a lot of crafting, I'm sure you'll see when you open up the crafting station that a lot of times it takes a long time for it to load. That system has probably grown beyond what it initially was designed for, and adding thousands upon thousands of new recipes for a new green steel was something that we didn't feel comfortable with, because it would have just bogged down the old crafting system even more. So part of the impetus is to avoid that. And going forward, if we can move some of the old augments off of that and into a new sort of streamlined and technically more efficient system, that would be good. And then in the future, other things can use this system as well.
Great. I wanted to ask the question, certain spell power abilities were left kind of out of the system. Not that they were in the heroic system before, but a lot of players were bringing up things like Force, Light, and Sonic spell power as kind of being noticeably absent from the Green Steel system. Can you maybe speak to why that is? Was it flavor? Was it kind of planning for the future, balance, that kind of stuff?
So you've already immediately touched on a lot of it. There's a number of things, and that's one of the most prominent ones is certain spell powers being missing. Some of it is ability scores are on weapons versus other choices. We don't want Green Steel to let you make absolutely anything. That is definitely not the intent. It is very large and gives you a lot of options, but basically if it did everything for everyone, then there'd be no need or desire for players to have other loot in the future. So we want other named items in U29 and in Update 30 and 31 and going on. We're going to want to be able to produce other new items. And they're going, for at least a while, they're going to be competing with Green Steel. And so we need to leave holes. Some of the reasons why particular things weren't there was because we were actually mirroring heroic Green Steel in a lot of places. Sometimes it's a matter of, well, it worked, and we could arbitrarily remove other things and replace them with these spell powers, but most of them, there was actually desirable stuff, and we didn't want to be pulling stuff out, which would surely upset some other players who want those stats, to put in something else.
And also at the time when we were doing heroic Green Steel work, those specific spells and types of spells supported by that actually weren't all that common to player usage or used as much, and so those are reasons why they were left out originally.
Right.
I think there's also a little bit of the focus aspect. There's a thematic thing going on there. There's not really you've got the 6 different elemental foci, and Force, Light, and Sonic don't really fit into that scheme either.
Right. So there is, and I don't think many players are very into this, but I'm sure some would appreciate it. The entire Green Steel system is based on a deep lore background of the Eberron planes. There is a reason that it includes things like magma and salt and ooze. Those are all part of demi-planes and quasi-planes. And that is why the focus, essences, and gems are named what they are. And so, yeah, it is, there's fire and earth and water and air. That's the basis of it. That's where they came from.
Are you saying there's not a plane of +6?
There's not a plane of +6 60 light spell power.
Is there a plane of ooze commanding?
There's
an ooze army?
The ooze one is one of the more standouts that we have tried to give its due in Legendary Green Steel, though players have not seen the results of that yet.
There is, though. Doesn't Jubilex have at least part of a plane?
Oh, there is
Yeah.
one of the demi planes or quasi planes. I always forget which is named which. There oozes in there with magma and fire, and the rest of them. I forget a lot of the details, but there's some kind of ooze world.
It was one. I remember when Green Steel came out and people started figuring out the whole ooze combination, and for a while, having ooze weapons was kind of all the rage. Not from the bestest weapon around, but ooze armies were strangely addictive.
Ooze is one of those kinds of things that we put in knowing not every player is going to be, oh my god, this is the mini-max power thing that everyone's going to love. But some players just find it fun. And you know what? We want to put in things that are just fun. Even if they're not always going to absolutely destroy every monster you face. Summoning an ooze is pretty cool.
Speaking of fun things, I want to move on to not really a great name for it yet, I guess, but we'll talk about the new 20th completion lists mechanic, which isn't really a 20th completion, but the mechanics is replacing that, where you get runes in the chest from running the raids, and then you can turn those in for essentially a 20th loot list. Why did you guys decide to go for such a big departure for 20th completion list? What was the motivation and thinking behind that?
I can take that one. So one of the big factors was a desire to address a long-standing piece of community feedback that we've been getting regarding raids, which is, why should I run a raid on Elite when it's far better to run it 20 times on normal? And we want to be able to offer better rewards for higher difficulties, while at the same time making sure that people run at the challenge level that they would prefer. So the nice thing, and we wanted to address some feedback about. I would like to have some progress made on rating even when I'm on true reincarnating frequently. So the nice thing about this raid rune system is, one, the runes you get are bound to account and persist through lives, right? So you'll be collecting them, and over the course of multiple lives, you can, make progress toward turning in those runes toward the item of your choice. It also helps diversify those who want to play some of their alts, but they didn't feel comfortable doing that because they really wanted to get the completions on their ranger for whatever it was. And then it also does allow us to create a system that allows people who just want to run normal because that's what they like to be able to do that, but not make it the default quote best way to do it. So those who want to challenge themselves on Elite will be rewarded for that challenge in a more granular way that scales across the difficulty level.
As a more philosophical thing, we want players to play at the challenge they feel is appropriate for them. It's a really horrible thing if players feel like they should be playing on Elite, but that it's the wrong way to play. We never want that to be the feeling. If you want the challenge and think you can handle Elite, we don't want you to feel like, but I'll get my loot faster on normal. That's just terrible.
Should players be prepared for some of the numbers associated with this to shift after launch?
You mean raid runes in particular in terms of drop rates?
Drop rates, number to turn in, that kind of stuff.
I mean, I'm sure it's stuff we'll keep an eye on. I don't think we have any particular plans to change it, but we haven't got the feedback yet, right? And the actual time, it's one of those things where we want hard and Elite and normal to give out appropriate amounts based on how long they take to complete, but sometimes our estimates on how long they're going to take to complete is not always perfectly spot on. So those are the reasons why they might change.
Are you telling me that players complete dungeons faster than you sometimes think that they could?
I think I've been quoted on the forums as saying, when challenged, DDO players tend to overperform. Something along those lines.
Fair enough. Are these lists going to be static, or they're not going to change from turn-in to turn-in? And would they perhaps be including tomes that you might find in some of these raids before?
So they're unlike 20th lists in the past. They are not going to be randomly populated each time or anything like that. It is more like, in that respect, it is more like many of our crafting systems where the same items will be there for the same price. That's our intent. As far as other items on there, I think some of that is, I don't think we have tomes on any of the lists at this time, but I'm sure it's something that we'll be talking about. And this is, again, something that we expect to be using for future raids as years go by. So this is the test run.
Are there any thoughts on expanding that backwards to some of the existing raids?
I don't think we have any immediate plans to do anything like that. I mean, certainly the initial feedback on this has been very positive, and we've been seeing a lot of folks on, say, the forums say, do it. It's just a matter of, like any kind of retroactive change, carving out the development time in order to do it. And at this time, I don't know that we have that penned in anywhere.
Fair enough. If I could make a small request, sands, seals, and shards. Just going to leave it there. So I want to talk a little bit about the quests, because we're getting a few new quests and raids. What can players expect in these new quests?
A bit about the quests. These two quests, I worked on Creeping Death, particularly. That one is more of a kind of a harken back to the lower level old days of sewer quests. Get to meet Garko, one of Eritricos' minions, and his buddy Death Touch, which may or may not be a large gelatinous cube. And sort of one of the ideas or concepts that we were sort of playing with was what types of gameplay and what type of repeatability do we have for these specific dungeons? What are the types of challenges that we can put different level players through, and types of things that they want to see? They like, what spins can we put on common mechanics that they've seen before, and kind of give them a new coat of paint? And those are some of the stuff that we really try to do for this particular update, especially since, given the fact that there was a smaller number of quests going out, we wanted to sort of give a wider array and different types of audiences a chance to go through this stuff.
How tough are you guys expecting the new raids to be?
That is always a very difficult question to answer.
Fair
because when you're looking at a huge spectrum of players, including a whole bunch of people who aren't playing content on our preview server, so we can always make estimates in terms of what we want it to be is challenging to as many people as possible, while not making it too difficult nor too easy. And that's always a bit of a moving target to some extent, right? Do we expect, your average brand new player to go in on Legendary Elite Solo and complete it? Probably not.
Do you expect anyone to go in on Legendary Solo and complete it?
Not currently, but how about this? Having said that I don't expect people to complete on the Legendary, someone will prove me wrong, right?
The gauntlet has been thrown.
Yeah.
Right now right now Elite is hitting really, really hard. And I think that one of the things that we've done with this update is we really improved the Intimidate skill. So if the mobs are hitting really hard and you're worried about like two-shotting your DPS, you can have a hardcore tank that uses Intimidate to actually hold aggro, whereas before it just wouldn't. So when you first use Intimidate, a successful Intimidate will add a lot to your threat range, much, much more than before, and also your melee attacks will have a much higher threat multiplier than before too.
Oh, really? I haven't seen this before.
I would like to say also that we are really interested in hearing feedback once Update 29 hits live. I know I'd been talking to Knockback this morning about it, and he's very keen on hearing what people feel the challenge is when we go live, and should be, in the future. So make sure if you're hearing this and you have an opinion on it, please let us know, because we very much do want to sort of hear your experience on live on this, and perhaps make adjustments if we feel we need to.
So after you pick up the pieces of your dead body and broken armor, go to the forums and say, ow!
Yeah, I would say this, and I did say this on the forums this morning even, in regards to a question of basically, should I be able to solo on Legendary Elite? And we do not design raids, particularly endgame Legendary Elite raids, with the idea that they are solo. That's not a design goal. That it happens sometimes, is certainly great. We don't want to tell people that they can't. But I think when we are designing raid content, it is designed for groups of people, perhaps, particularly if you want to face some of the most difficult challenges, ideally you'd have a more balanced party.
All that said, we
Yep.
do, if you have a full party, we do want most players to be able to complete it. Not necessarily on Elite, it's not our expectation,
Right.
but everyone should be able to partake of the content if they want to, assuming they can find some players to play with, to get not solo necessarily.
Yeah, right.
I bet that balance drives you a little batty at sometimes. I remember in Pen and Paper, the DM trying to figure out how to throw monsters at a party where there was a guy with AC in like the 80s and a wizard who had 10 AC and half the hit points.
Right. Yeah, I guess so. In terms of the difficulty, if you, a good way to look at it is if you are grouping with your friends or whatever your typical gameplay experience is, are you having fun? Are you feeling challenged? Are you getting the rewards that you want? Without it being a cakewalk, but also without it being, well, I guess I can't run that. We want it to be somewhere in a nice happy medium there, right?
I want to go back to something I think Severlin said, because I haven't seen anything about this. You were talking about changes to Intimidate. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Sure, we did a number of changes to Intimidate to help out people who actually want to hold aggro. The animation has been reduced. Instead of doing a right-handed 3-second dance shake fist animation, it does like a left-handed beckon that's about half of the animation time. The cooldown was changed to 6 seconds instead of 15, and the duration of the aggro boost was changed to 12 seconds. So it's possible for you to do a intimidate on one creature and do an intimidate on a second creature while the first one is still under that aggro boost, and the amount of initial hate that it generates is equal to, it used to be equal to just the skill, which obviously at high levels is when you add 90 hate to something and people are critting for 10,000, then it's kind of useless. But now it drops hate equal to your skill times 200.
So if you could get 100 Intimidate, that's like you're doing 20,000 extra damage.
Right. So when you it puts you at the top of the hate list, and then adds 20,000 damage to the hate. And for melee, you're boosted now to ×4 threat range instead of to plus 400% threat instead of plus 100% threat. So when you do a successful Intimidate and start whacking at the thing, even if you're not maybe doing as much damage as the DPS, you should be able to keep those things stuck to you.
Yeehaw. My Intimidate tank just did a little happy dance.
Yeah, hopefully that will be good for your Intimidate tank. That it will work throughout the content and into the end game. You'll be able to intimidate things, and if you really focus on Intimidate, be able to have it stuck to you.
Some of this is things that I'm sure we may need to adjust in the future as we see it actually being used. And if someone's putting out truly absurd high numbers of DPS, they might occasionally have to back off if they're overcoming the tank's Intimidate.
Yeah.
But it should be much, much more difficult.
Right. And that doesn't
than ever before.
That doesn't include the tank's aggro abilities, and it also doesn't include the DPS's ability to take stuff that drops aggro. Like I looked at diplomacy, and even though and I changed the animation to be shorter, so instead of doing the coward don't hit me in the face animation, it does kind of a bow, which is much shorter, but that scales well because it reduces a percentage of your hate based on your diplomacy score. So if you activate one of your epic destiny moment of glories and draw aggro, you could use diplomacy now to dump aggro enough so that the tank grabs it back, especially if they have an Intimidate up.
So you changed diplomacy too a little bit?
Just the animation.
Just the animation. Okay.
Like the actual
It's
mechanics for diplomacy scaled fine. It's just you don't have 4 seconds of throwing your hands up in front of your face and losing all dignity.
Okay, great. Thanks for the explanation on that.
Sure.
It was kind of out of left field for me. I like that stuff.
Surprise!
Yeah. It's always fun to be surprised, right? It means I get to do some breaking news, right? That's always fun for a new show.
Yeah, I don't think anybody else knows that except you.
Woohoo! I want to touch a little bit on Cannith crafting and just kind of check in because I know we've kind of been waiting for the new random loot system to come in and play and see how that goes. But just want to see if there's any news on Cannith crafting, and is the intent possibly going to be that players can basically create stuff based on the new random loot system, or is it going to be still kind of based on the older system?
It's going to be very much based on the new system and use the new scaling effects and be based off what's dropping in random loot as of update 29. We don't have specific details yet because randomized loot needed to get finished and get some polish on it before we could start designing based off of that system. So that will be coming up shortly, and I'm sure we'll get some information out for the players with more specifics.
I think Patrick's telling you to get to work. No worries.
Yeah, I know. That's how I took it.
At first, just to be clear though, for this update, Cannith crafting will make old style items the exact same way as it does on live until we update it soonish.
It's not changing in update 29.
Yes.
Yeah, probably sometime in 2016.
I also want to make sure we get the word out that people who enjoy Caneth crafting should not feel that they can't do it between now and the new Caneth crafting update. That, if you are leveling up in Caneth crafting and that sort of thing, we are going to make an attempt to preserve that sort of work you've done in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and I figure you probably want to let about 20,000 players come and bang on the new random loot system with hammers and see how it holds up.
I guess what I want to say though is, like, if you're, say, 140 in your Caneth crafting level and you're like, well, I'd like to do more leveling, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be set back to level 1 with the new system, the answer is no. You're not going to be set back to level 1 with the new system. I don't know exactly how the system itself is going to shake out, but we're going to make sure that those who have put in the effort, don't basically have a reset button hit on them.
Great. I just want to end first by saying thank you for the time and for all the explanation and answering all these questions for players and the community. But I also wanted to just say anything maybe you can tease about 2016 that players can be looking forward to.
Well, we have the anniversary coming up with gnomes. That's the worst kept secret ever. I think we've even talked about it on podcasts. We've hinted at players that we want to do something special for Halloween. So we had a cool Halloween festival, maybe touch upon that, but then do content appropriate for Halloween this year that I think players would be excited about in terms of that. So I think that would be a big deal when we talk about it.
I think we're going to see a focus on new content in 2016 as opposed to, doing new versions of existing content. There may be some flexibility there, but I think in general the idea is to focus a little bit on newer content. And also, we are going to try to do several things for the anniversary. It's going to be basically a big party to celebrate DDO's 10th anniversary, so we're going to be having a lot more information on that. We are going to be working on a producer's letter as well. It'll be out after the holidays, probably sometime early mid-January, I would say.
And of course, class passes and balances and stuff that you guys are just continuing working on as well.
Yep, fighter's next. So
Ever
we have
ongoing.
to do fighter. And we want to, we are currently looking at monks because we have to revamp hand wraps. We have to revamp druid forms and do druids. We owe favored soul and extra tree. At some point, I want to do cleric domains to help differentiate them from favored souls. So there's a lot of cool stuff we have for the class passes. And one of the things that I'm glad we got to this update is the casters are pretty cool and heroic, but we're kind of falling behind in epic, so I'm glad we were able to give them a lot of love with the new feats, both at level 30 and previous. So I think that they have a lot of options now in epic in order to improve their casting.
Feedback on that would be awesome too. We expect that to shake some things up. So
Great. Well, thanks again, guys, and happy holidays.
Happy
Thank you,
holidays.
Patrick.
And once again, thank you very much to the devs for taking the time out of their busy day with Update 29 coming very soon, that they would take some time out of their busy schedule and chat with us for a little bit there. We're going to get into game news here. There's not a lot of it this week. There was some notes about random loot, that hardness was adjusted, UMD was adjusted, paralyzing will start showing up at minimum level 15. And the loot tables go up to level 40. It means that running a base level 32 raid on Elite will still leave 6 levels for loot boosts to have an effect. Implement bonuses to spell power will show up on any weapon that has a spell power bonus effect. There's also a little bit of news about the Traveler's Trunk. As part of Update 29, they're making changes to the Traveler's Terrific Trunk to improve 2 of the potions included in it. While this change will retroactively upgrade existing and unopened trunks on patch day, they will be contacting DDO store customers tonight who previously purchased the trunk during its fall debut release in order to provide replacement potions. The 2 potions that are being upgraded are, formerly, you could get 5 times superior experience boost potions that will be replaced with 5 Sovereign 1 experience boost potions. And the Greater Slayer Boost potions will be replaced with Major Slayer Boost potions, so a little bit of an upgrade for both accounts. If you purchased a Traveler's Terrific Trunk previously, you receive an email from their e-commerce team containing a code for replacement potions. If you still have the old potions, you do not need to return them. Note that if you purchased a large number of trunks, they have divided the stacks into multiple codes for easier delivery into your inventory. It is important that if you receive a coupon in the email from them, do not share the coupon with others, as these coupons are unable to be used on multiple accounts. It sounds like they are one-time use only. Also, additional news, hot off the presses at the time of this recording, the DDO servers will be down on Thursday, December 17th, for Update 29. Will be released. Bonus days this week. You can get 20% crafting XP extra, and also double commendations of Valor. And remember that they are saying that crafting XP and levels will carry over in some manner into the new crafting system. The store news is not out yet at the time of this recording. I apologize for that, but I wanted to get this show out since it was Ask the Devs, and with Update 29 coming very shortly. I wanted to get that out in front of you guys before that happened as best as I was able. Community news, the 171st Chronicle of the Heroes of Hinfolk are hosting a trivia event on Galana this Saturday. Find them at 11 o'clock in the morning and 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern in the Anvil Fire Inn for prizes. That's in House D if you don't know where that is. Shoemaker has a new build-oriented show on Twitch. Find out more about Shoemaker Cobbles a Blank. Let's see, the guild for the week. The Hell's Chimps is a Kyber-based guild that's growing and looking for more members. The guild has a Kraken airship and more. You can find out about them. The Chronicle comment. How do monsters celebrate the holidays? I think they decorate their trees with the loot and limbs and other pieces of adventurers that happen to fail in their adventuring in the vicinity of the monsters. Fan site news. DDO Players News looked at Update 29 and Magical Duct Tape in their 63rd show. We got a shout out for our 409th episode looking at hit points. The Order of Syncletica stealths through an army of shadow. DDO Gamer wrote about his mandatory healer build. It was a nice, a fun little tank healing hybrid to help him with his, shall we say, lack of consistency in healing. Enrique got some payback. The long shot looked at classic D&D art and map making. Dirty William continues his Wraith video series with Assault on Summerfield, and Mickey offered a recommendation on reincarnation mapping. See, the Festival Jester will be appearing soon, presumably with Update 29. Some other videos this week. Voodoo had a video of soloing Demon Queen on Epic Elite with his Warlock tank build. The Shady Rogues went to The Prisoner, or Vaughn 2. Mickey's Delirium was talking about leading raids. Full Moon Fury celebrated getting their second Epic Completionist done. And that pretty much wraps up the community news. If you were paying attention to DDOCast Splat, we did wipe fairly recently, and we're starting our new lives this week, and already had a little bit of a minor setback. And we are back to Korthos. Everyone didn't die, but someone did die, so we went down a little lower than we were running to accommodate that person. Lightning Post. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? Well, I think the appropriate response to that would be, is it an Eberonian swallow or a Forgotten Realms swallow? So with that, I'll thank the devs once more for good measure, and thanks to all the other contributors to DDOcast, and thanks for listening to the show. Thanks also to Turbine and Wizards for making DDO happen, allowing us to enjoy a great game. And thanks to Cyberus for hosting the podcast. You can hit us up at DDOcast.com for show notes, our calendar, previous shows, swag, and other fun stuff. If you'd like to be a part of the show, or if you have a comment on this episode, if you have a question you'd like to ask us, or a topic you'd like to hear us debate, or you just want to say hi, you can leave a comment or email us at ddocast@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media and follow us for the latest cast updates. The closing tip from the week comes from Purger. You can buy Dispel Wands in House P and use them to dispel spell wards. A handy trick if you don't have a rogue. So until next time, all your attack rolls be crits, all your chest level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to enjoy Update 29.